I get out there hugging folks and I don't even see what time it is. It's time to go. Welcome to Mount Vernon Unitarian Church. We are a welcoming community for seekers of all types. My name is Reverend Ian White-Marr, and I'd like to extend a special welcome to anyone who's joining us for the first time, second time. You've been coming just a few times. I'll be outside after the service and coffee hour. Please come by and say hello. I'd love to get to know you and try to learn your name. Sometimes it's hard. And welcome to everyone online. Those who were willing, say hi. All right, we love having you with us. It's always great to have you as part of our extended community, so thank you so much. A couple quick announcements. Thank you to everyone who helped with the Adopt a Highway program on Saturday, April 13th. It's great. It's a great thing we do, so thank you so much for doing that. This Saturday, last Saturday, I guess, this past Saturday, April 20th, we started our plant sale. It's going to run for 6 weekends, Saturday and Sunday, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m., and that'll go to March 26th. I'm sure that they can use help. Is that correct? Active nodding. Please help. If you're new, if you've been coming around just a little bit, there's 2 ways to really get to know people. One, ushering is a fantastic way to just get started. You get to shake a lot of hands, meet a lot of people. Also, the plant sale is wonderful. It's a fun group of folks, and it's pretty easy. Our social justice team, and this is kind of connected to the sermon today, our social justice team is connecting with Virginia's UU State Action Network to learn how to defend democracy. There's a Zoom meeting that's coming up on April 23rd. On April 27th, we're having a game night. We're not just about serious spiritual matters here. We're also about fun, right? So April 27th, game night, Holland Hall, 5 p.m. And also that morning, April 27th, we're having our next introduction to UU and MVUC. It's a Saturday morning. You can come for bagels and coffee and juice and hear a little bit about what it's like to be a member here. We're having our final joining ceremony in June, and it's not required to take this, but it's strongly encouraged. So it's a fun time, and you get to learn a lot more about who we are and what we stand for. There's a lot more in the newsletter, so if you don't have that yet or you're not getting that yet, just go out to the Commons. There's a table right in the middle. It's our fellowship table and our membership table, and we can get you signed up so that you get all of the news. With that, actually, I'm going to turn it over to a testimonial today. Bev Coakley, come on up.
I want to keep this short and sweet. When I was asked to give a testimonial about why I was attracted to MVUC or why I joined and became a member, and the word that just keeps coming over and over again is gratitude. Gratefulness that I live in this country. It's this flawed, beautiful, imperfect, always changing experiment of a country that we have where, I didn't have to worry about being sold into a child marriage, and my parents, I grew up really poor, like the kind of poor where some ignorant people might call Department of Social Services on you instead of a social worker, which is what you would need. 8 children on a factory worker's salary in northern New York State. We heated with wood, we cooked with wood. And Catholic Charities was my mother's lifeline to food when my father would get laid off. That was the upbringing I had, and I resented it all through my teenage years, but now as an adult, I thank goodness and I thank the people that were in charge for their kindness and all kindnesses to large families or any struggling family. And so this is my way to give back by trying to be a part of a congregation that has social justice at its core. And I love that I live in a country where I can join any church I want, and I can I can have any opinion I want, and I'm not thrown into a prison in Siberia. And I mean, yeah, maybe the police officer isn't super polite to me when he pulls me over and asks me how do I know why I was pulled over, and can he see my license? And I'm like, you know. But again, I think it's gratitude. It's gratitude every morning when I wake up, and that's why. That's my testimonial. Thank you.
Our offertory this month is the Friends of Guest House. It's for women who are re-entering the community after incarceration. It was founded in 1974, and they've helped more than 5,000 women break the cycle of recidivism. So if you're new, what we do is we split the plate every month. So half goes to MVUC, half goes to a program. And so this month is Friends of Guest House. Please be as generous as you can. It's a one hymnal day today. It's all in the teal hymnal. Somebody was like, "You are the new minister." Somebody said that. Our first hymn today is 1018. 1018, Come and Go With Me, number 1018. With me to that land where I'm bound.
This morning's chalice reading is called Committed to Respond, and it was written by Jerry Kishbaugh-Hillebrand and Shirley Ann Rack. An arc of Earth's surface, blue oceans and swirling white clouds taken from space. Committed to respond to the call of a wounded world, we join together this day with loving hearts, hands, and minds. Embracing the interconnected web of water, air, and earth, we light a fire of sustaining hope, ever bright with love and justice. May we bring forth this day new wisdom, strength, and courage to create a new world, not of wealth, but of well-being. A world of new peace and abundance for all. As we give thanks for this earth, our shared and singular home, may we dedicate ourselves to its ongoing care, rising to the calls deep within us and all around us. May we respond today and always with courage and with love. Please remain standing as comfortable and able as we recite the covenant of our church. Love is the teaching of this church. The quest of truth is its daily task, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve life in community, to the end that all souls shall grow in harmony. This is our covenant with each and with all. Sit down. Please be seated. Our next hymn is number 1007. That's 1007 in the Teal hymnal. There's a river flowing in my soul.
I invite you now to enter into a space of contemplative silence, of prayer and meditation. Maybe you find your feet on the floor, your back against the chair. Get in touch with your breath as it goes in and out of your body. Maybe extending each inhale and each exhale just a little bit more than the last. Allow the room to be just as it is. There's nothing out of place. The crackles, the coughs, the subtle movements, everything is just as it is. One great whole experience. And as we lean into the theme of our month, which is rebirth, what is growing in you? What is reaching to the sky, calling you into transformation? We'll sit for a few moments in silence. I'll ring the chime to bring us out, at which point you can come forward and light a candle if you choose. I'm not sure how many children we have in the room today, but let's sing them out. You'll find it printed in the order of service if you don't know the song yet, but if you knew, most of you probably do, so hop right in.
It's mud season in the high valleys and hollers of Appalachia. The snows are mostly melted, rains have arrived, and the ground has thawed. I know all of this means soon there will be sparkles of spring, the ephemeral wildflowers. Then the beech, oaks, maples, and aspen will leaf out again. But at the start of mud season, the trees and bushes are still gray and bare, and the ground is deep, dark, wet, cold mud. The kind of mud that is so slick your foot will easily slide out from under you. And yet it's so sticky that picking yourself back up is a challenge. The suction that mud has once your boot sinks in makes for an extra workout for your legs. Now, if you're walking along a trail and come to a particularly wet patch, you're supposed to walk straight through it. Tiptoeing along the drier edges actually causes more harm, widening the trail and destroying the ecosystems along that edge. So yeah, it's better to go right through the mud. Ick. Why would anybody want to go out when it means going through that? Especially when we can just stay where it's dry and warm. But then how do we get to see those wildflowers as they pop through the mud? How would we have a chance to find the morel mushrooms or ramps that wild garlic to forage? During mud season, local outdoor enthusiasts share a phrase: embrace the suck. Yep. Here, suck is both a reference to what the mud does to the boots and a poke at our disdain for things that aren't just right. Looking for a hiking trail that's dry? Forget it. Embrace the suck. Looking for an indoor activity because the weekend is a rainy washout? Maybe just go outside anyways and embrace the suck. Because that's what it takes to see those tiny bluets, the trout lilies, the wild violets. You have to trudge through the rich mud that feeds those flowers. I've been attempting cross-country skiing at Whitegrass, a ski center that celebrates every small joy, including the mud. Once, happy and tired after a lesson and some practice, I was approaching the lodge, and I didn't manage to stop myself before the snow became muddy grass, which did stop me in my tracks and sent me splat. The teacher watched this and asked if I was okay, and then he saw the smile that was plastered on my face and said, "Hey, what happens at Whitegrass stays at Whitegrass." Mm-hmm. But I looked down at all that was stuck to my pants and my jacket, and I let him know some Whitegrass was coming home with me. I don't know when I developed a disdain for mud. As a kid, I would grab the garden hose and fill a depression in the lawn. And then barefoot, I'd stomp that puddle until the grass was torn up and the dirt became mud, and it would ooze between my toes. I loved it. But somewhere along the way, I must have heard that mud wasn't good. It's dirty. Stay out of it. Thank goodness for all those who remind me to embrace the suck, to remember how much joy can be found in mud, and through that joy, to find how much grows out of that rich, nurturing decomposition that is the mud.
I don't often introduce anthems, but today I think it's important. Well, first off, it's very low, and we were having trouble singing that low. So Rhea said, oh, I can change that. And right on the spot changed the key for us. We want to thank her for her talents. This is a march. And it's intended, as you see from the Confessing Church at the top of your, the Confessing Church was a collection of congregations united in resistance against the rise of Nazism by the greater German Christian movement. So that's why I chose this march to indicate the togetherness and solidarity churches can have.
On the morning of July 1st, 1937, the Gestapo arrived to arrest Martin Niemöller at his rectory in Berlin. He would spend the next 8 years as a prisoner in the Sachsenhausen and Dachau concentration camps, narrowly escaping execution. The Lutheran pastor had become known as one of the leading voices of the Confessing Church, and at the time of his arrest, it was controversial both in and out of Germany. But for most of us, he is perhaps best known for the poetic rendering of a speech he gave in 1946 known as First They Came. It sounds like some of you know it. First they came for the communists, and I did not speak out because I was not a communist. Then they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak out for me. And we talked about Niemöller briefly back in February because as powerful and as cautionary as this poem is, it wasn't just that Niemöller didn't speak out. In the early years, he was actually quite pro-Hitler. In our longing to find and recognize those who resisted the rise of National Socialism, Niemöller's post-war activism has helped us curate a myth about the church's opposition to Nazism, but the reality is there wasn't that much of it. If you've heard of it at all, the confessing church is often referred to as an ecumenical movement that pushed back against the Nazis and their influence on the church in Germany, a movement that ultimately failed. But the truth is more nuanced. In 1933, in an effort to align the church with National Socialism, Adolf Hitler appointed Ludwig Müller as Reichsbishop. Anybody speak German? How do we say that? Reichsbishop. Yeah, exactly. He was the appointed head of the German Evangelical Church, which is a consolidation of different churches. And while this was controversial to some, it was perhaps for the wrong reasons. Many, if not most, German pastors were in favor of Aryanizing what was becoming known as the German church. But some pastors opposed what they began to see as a deification of Hitler. This was the impulse that created the confessing church, representing Lutherans, Calvinists, and Catholics who found a common voice in the Barmen Declaration written in 1934 that reasserted that Jesus was, in fact, Lord and head of the church, not any political Führer. Now, this kind of seems hardly controversial, but at the time, Barmen was, in a way, a rebuke of the creeping idea that Hitler and Nazism would and could define the church. But this never meant that the confessing church pastors were anti-Nazi. Quite the opposite, many of them, Niemöller included, longed for strong leadership and believed that National Socialism had an infectious vitality that could bring back self-respect, discipline, and selflessness, along with some healthy morality to the German people. What they were against was having their sphere of influence, their siloed power, being determined by those outside of the church. And we don't want these politicians coming in and telling us how to run our churches. You know, history has criticized the confessing church for its silence around the persecution of the vulnerable, Jews, gypsies, socialists. But that was never really the point of the confessing church. They failed because they did not understand the moment that they were in. They thought that they could protect their small spiritual plots on the German cultural landscape. What they didn't realize was that the Germans were coming for it all. Following his appointment to the Reichsbishop, which granted the Nazi Party broad jurisdiction over internal church affairs, Ludwig Müller addressed the National Synod triumphantly. "The old has come to an end. The new has begun. The political church struggle is over. The struggle for the soul of the people now begins." For Müller and his compatriots, this meant professing and evangelizing an interpretation of Christianity that was so closely intertwined with nationalism that it was hard to say where one began and the other ended. The confessing church spoke of resistance, but it was formed to uphold the centrality of the Bible, if not its actual message. For example, it was silent about Kristallnacht. Render unto Caesar seemed to be its guiding value. Let the politicians have the culture. We just want the church. This is about power, not virtue. And regardless of revisionism, the confessing church was not really a resistance organization. It was a failure of imagination and vision. We perhaps only speak of it today due to the lasting fame of some of its leaders. Niemöller, of course, who became a very active anti-war activist and participated in lots of areas of the movement in the second half of the last century. Karl Barth, if you're a theology nerd, principal author of the Barmen Declaration and one of the best-known Calvinist theologians of the last century. And if we're honest, it's probably the legacy of Dietrich Bonhoeffer that allows for the confessing church to have any sense of legitimacy. As some of you know, Bonhoeffer was a Lutheran pastor and theologian who plotted to assassinate Adolf Hitler. He was arrested on April 5th, 1943, and was executed 2 years later on April 9th, 1945, as Nazism was collapsing, a mere 21 days before Hitler would suicide himself. A last act of vengeance, it would seem. It would take the German state another 51 years before it would expunge the charge of treason that led to his hanging. And while some people still read his books, the Cost of Discipline has been described as a modern classic, most really don't. His writing is too Christian for most liberals and too anti-fascist for most conservatives. Still, Dietrich Bonhoeffer exists within the popular imagination for those who want to wrestle with what does it mean or what it means to be a patriot. That is, are you willing to be a traitor for the sake of humanity? Bonhoeffer was a key founding member of the Confessing Church, and in the early years, he preached on the church's responsibility to work for peace. He seriously considered moving to India to study nonviolent resistance with Mahatma Gandhi. But within just 6 years of the Barmen Declaration, Bonhoeffer was engaged in a violent attempt to overthrow Hitler and the Nazi regime. And while he never left the Confessing Church, it's clear that somewhere along that path, he awakened to the reality of their situation in a way that most of his contemporaries did not. His willingness to engage in the conspiracy came from a metabolizing of Christianity, not as identity, but as his very lifeblood. Writing to a dear friend from prison, Bonhoeffer states, "Only when one loves life and the earth so much that without them everything seems to be lost, and at its end one may believe in the resurrection of the dead and a new world." This isn't a statement of faith or an ideological position. Bonhoeffer acted because he had fallen in love with the world. He exists as one of the true Christian martyrs of the last century, but not because of his involvement in the Confessing Church, almost despite it. Right? In a letter celebrating his godson's baptism, just a few months before he was executed, he cautioned, "We believed we could make our way in life with reason and justice. And when both failed us, we no longer saw any way forward. We have also overestimated time and again the importance of reasonableness and justice in influencing the course of history." Speaking directly to his godson, "You who are growing up in the midst of a world war where 90% of humankind doesn't want, but for which they are giving their lives in goods will learn from childhood that this world is ruled by forces against which reason can do nothing. Words that seem to confront us today. There's a quote that's often attributed to Mark Twain that goes, "History does not repeat itself, but it rhymes." Yeah. The author is probably Theodore Reich, a Jewish student of Sigmund Freud who emigrated to the United States in 1938. To suggest what happened in Germany in the 1920s, 30s, 40s is repeating in the United States today is not correct. But it rhymes. We are witnessing a conflation of Christianity and nationalism so completely it's hard to know where one begins and the other ends. We are hearing people talk about the pollution of the national blood. I wouldn't quite say, as Ludwig Müller did, that the political church struggle is over, but I do believe we are very much in the struggle for the soul of the people. The overturning of Roe v. Wade is being credited as inspiring many people to get engaged and vote. But the fix may already be in. Voting may no longer be enough. Roe v. Wade and even that attempted coup on January 6, 2021 are not events that set our troubled politics in motion. They are the consequence of long-term organizing. Speaking this year at CPAC, the annual conference for conservative activists and U.S. elected officials just across the water at National Harbor this year, alt-right influencer Jack Posobiec greeted the crowd by saying, "Welcome to the end of democracy. We are here to overthrow it completely." Posobiec said, this as the event began, "We didn't get all the way there on January 6th, but we will endeavor to get rid of it and replace it with this right here," as he raised his fist, and the crowd went wild. He then continued, "Because all glory is not to government, all glory to God." This man has more than 2.5 million followers on Twitter. It might be logical to understand the efforts of the GOP officials in Ohio who are trying to remove Biden from the election as some sort of quid pro quo for Colorado's attempt to remove Trump, but this is too facile, I think. Trump is a seditionist, and the 14th Amendment is clear. But by conflating the two, it gives convenient cover for the anti-democratic partisans who have been gerrymandered into power. It is part of a unified assault that includes defunding public education, delegitimizing elections and government, and subjugating marginalized communities like women, people of color, and queer people. Every day, we are losing more of our rights. Missouri, Texas, Arkansas, and Arizona now bar or deter judges from granting divorces if you are pregnant. Each of these 4 states also have near total bans on abortion, which means that you must stay pregnant against your will and you cannot legally divorce an abusive partner. This is frighteningly cruel when you learn that homicide is the leading cause of death for pregnant and postpartum people in the United States. The Louisiana Supreme Court just ruled that priests have the right not to be sued for sexual abuse. And in Florida, before felons can vote, they must pay off their court debts. But they also charge $50 a day for their incarceration, leaving people with amounts that they will never pay off. But it is more than just our rights that are at stake. We are in the struggle for the soul of the people. And we must decide if we have learned anything from the failure of the confessing church or not, because it is increasingly plausible that someone, some articulate voice in the future, might easily write to a loved one from prison saying, "We believed we could make our way in life with reason and justice, and when both failed us, we no longer saw any way forward." We have also overestimated time and again the importance of reasonableness and justice in influencing the course of history. History is not repeating itself, but it is rhyming. This movement existed before Trump. It will exist after Trump. But have we understood what is actually happening? Partisan attempts to exert control over courts and law enforcement threaten the rule of law and equal justice. Systematic disinformation and conspiracy theories detached from facts make it hard to even agree on a shared reality. Extreme partisan polarization and the politics of domination over cooperation make it hard to maintain any governing norms or stability. Rising illiberal, authoritarian, nativist, and anti-democratic strains on the right are challenging core liberal democratic principles that we've long taken for granted. Taken for granted. Taken for granted. We must vote. Yes, we must vote. But simply going through the motions of voting as usual without sustained pro-democracy mobilization and reform efforts will not be enough to safeguard the democratic governance and the rule of law that protects the most vulnerable among us. Progressives and liberals have traditionally placed great faith in institutions like the courts and bureaucracies. I believe in government. I believe in paying my taxes. I do. I love it. I have lived where people don't have good roads. I believe in these things. We believe in the established processes that constrain the excesses and resolve disputes. But I worry that we now live with an over-reliance on these guardrails, that we take them for granted. And much like the confessing church who thought the Nazis would just leave the church alone as long as the church stayed out of politics until they came for me and there was no one left to speak out for me. This is understandable, right? We have lived for a long period of relative political stability. And it's psychologically hard to accept that the norms that we've taken for granted are breaking down. But the left is living in a dream that assumes that one day there will be a return to politics as usual, even as that's looking increasingly unlikely. We cling to fantasies that hold aloft cross-partisan cooperation that Republicans no longer reciprocate. We pride ourselves on civility, rationality, and openness, perhaps excessively so, perhaps arrogantly so. And many of us see a values-forward approach as uncomfortably close to the emotionally charged, norm-breaking style of the right. I don't want to be like them. Well, we may not like to be like them right until there's nothing left. We grasp at classically liberal beliefs in universal reason and the assumption of good faith actors on all sides. And this leaves us flat-footed against a politics of disinformation and zero-sum domination. It seems so strange because the church seems like it should be, let's learn how to do nonviolence. We need to learn how to fight. They are not going to stop at Mason Hill Road just because you're nice. or just because you're educated, or just because you're white, or just because you're straight. They're not stopping there. They are coming for it all. What is it going to take for us to awaken to Bonhoeffer's spiritual truth that only when one loves life and the earth so much that without them everything seems to be lost? What is it going to take for us to choose life over death, to reject the allure of good manners and roll up our sleeves, to understand the moment that we're in and sacrifice comfort for liberation? There is no allied army that's going to land on the beaches of France. Right? This is our work to do. The confessing church waited too long. They refused to change, and they lost everything. We must become something new if we want to hold on to what is truly valuable. I'm so grateful that you sang that hymn, that anthem, right? We are a force when we march arm in arm, when we walk together. We don't have to be the same as them, but we need to learn about our power. How do we empower the right people? How do we disempower the wrong people? This is part of the soul work that's facing us. Amen.
Turn in your hymnals to number 1028, The Fire of Commitment. And you may stand as you're willing and able.
Guiding hands and hearts and spirits,
Please join me as we extinguish our chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Source of life, God, my darling, inspire us to see that beacon burning within us, the worth and dignity that we know is inherent to our lives and inherent to the life of every being. Awaken us to that space beyond boundary, beyond name, beyond the partisan walls that are created, the ones we create in our mind, the left, the right. Awaken us truly to that space where we all rest in source, interwoven, interdependent. And fill us with grace so that we might do what is asked of us in this moment in time, this character-defining moment, where we must grow and become something new so we can help protect those who cannot protect themselves. Amen. Service has ended. Keep playing. But I just want to thank the AV team over here. Thank you guys so much. Thank you to the ushers. Help us get started. Thank you to Mark and Rhea and the choir. So great to have you all with us. Isabel Arnold and Bev Coakley and Linda Davidson, who made this service happen. Thank you so much.